and that the matter was actually referred to the caucus for consideration. But that notwithstanding, Mr. Speaker, I think it is still possible for you to issue a communication on the decision of the Supreme Court, because it is quite direct and it's very specific on the legislation that was brought and was challenged, and it might be indicative and guide the House moving forward. I think the initial confusion had been caused somewhere around 2013, when an advisory opinion had been sought of the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court made a statement that sweepingly suggested that virtually every legislation must concern a county, because every part of the country is part of a county. And I think that created a confusion that has lasted almost 10 years. So it is very good that the Supreme Court finally clarified that it is not every piece of legislation that must go to the Senate, because not every piece of legislation concerns counties. So I would support a communication to that effect, because it would help us. Importantly, and it's of interest to this House, that the Supreme Court did address itself to the question of the NGCDF Act 2015, which was part of the legislation that was challenged on the basis that it did not go to the Senate. And the Supreme Court was very clear that it did not need to go to the Senate, and to that extent, it was not unconstitutional. That has direct relevance to matters we are litigating, and we will not talk about the merit, but it is important to note, because many people had thought that the Supreme Court had pronounced itself on the NGCDF Act as amended in 2022 and declared it unconstitutional, not knowing that the only pronouncement that had been made was on the initial NGCDF Act as it existed in 2013. And so it is also helpful because it's educative to Kenyans. It is helpful to judicial officers who are considering this to know that it is not true that the current NGCDF Act was ever declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. But with that, Mr. Speaker, I support an idea of a communication. Thank you.
Oundo, on the same issue?
Yes. Honorable Speaker, the Constitution of Kenya 2010 clearly demarcated the roles of the two chambers of Parliament. And it was always hoped and believed that the very senior members, so-called senior members who sit in the Senate, will be the first people to protect the Constitution of Kenya 2010. Fourth schedule, likewise, Honorable Speaker, set out the mandate of each level of government. I want to raise this to support the sentiments by my leader, and as you issue that communication, Honorable Speaker, go all your way to clearly demarcate where can government officers report to. Should they be called to Senate to answer on matters that are exclusively a national government matter? Can they just be called by anybody to go and do literally nothing? Honorable Speaker, when you meet quite a number of these accounting officers, they complain bitterly. They are always called upon to go to Senate to answer on matters that has got nothing to do with the county governments, with the devolution at all. So in that way of communication, Honorable Speaker, we request and beseech you to lay the law very clear so that we avoid this confusion, duplication, and essentially wanton waste of public time to answer the same question repeatedly from this end to this end. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Yes, George Murugara.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, indeed that request is actually timely. The reason being that what the Senate does and continues to do is actually in total breach of our Constitution. Just the other day, they had summoned the judiciary to go and answer questions, I don't know on what. Really? Can the Senate summon the judiciary to answer questions on matters that do not touch on county governments? And how does the judiciary have matters touching on county governments? I think when you go into this elaborate communication, consider also whether that was within their purview or this is the imaginative power they are giving to themselves. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Gishimu.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. As I add my voice to the request done by Honorable Junet, the demarcation between the mandate of the National Assembly and the Senate is already there in the Constitution, Article 95 and Article 96, respectively. Honorable Speaker, as you also give this communication, if you are persuaded to, my only worry is that whether your communication would also be binding on the other House of Parliament, but be as it may, that communication is also good for the public consumption so that it can be known which House of Parliament is abdicating or transgressing or trespassing into the other's House of Parliament, because the Constitution, as is written, cannot be changed, has not been changed. And unless that is done, then we have to maintain our lanes in terms of legislative oversight and representation. Honorable Speaker, thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Junet. I'll do so within the next 2 weeks. Next order.
Order number 9, the Anti-Money Laundering and Combating of Terrorism Financing Laws Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 5 of 2025, second reading, resumption of debate.
Who was on the floor? There was nobody on the floor.